Yeah, I think we're live. Oh wait, but let's put us in gallery view. Okay. Hi everyone. Hi Nina, welcome. Hi everyone. This is episode number 37 of Exploring Genuine Transformation, and my name is Lori Beth. If you haven't tuned into this show before, this is a show I created over a year ago. And the theme of the show is exploring transformation from a range of angles and topics. And my interest is transformation from the inside out, what it means to have more of ourselves and have more intimacy with life. Whatever that means for us individually and also as a collective, while also, instead of transformation doing things to get what we want. That might be a natural byproduct, but I'm interested in this show in exploring, what it actually means for us to transform and what that means for different people. So today I'm really excited to be interviewing and really having a conversation with Nina Camille. And Nina was actually the very first person on my show a year ago. So it's great to have you back on. You were the inaugural person. I'm in Bali and it feels really loud. I'm wondering if it is really loud in the background. Okay, good. The jungle there's lots of noises, lots of organic noises. So the theme of today is being you is the contribution. And what we are going to look at is, there's a lot. I think what I would say is that during this time of the pandemic, and especially at the beginning, I would say, but there's been a real emphasis of wanting to be a contribution. And I think for many people wanting to contribute to this time, we're in this like pivotal point. And actually the inspiration for this show came from a live that Nina did many months ago that was, exploring this and looking at how many of us feel like how we make a contribution is by doing and by creating something, rather than actually by being who we are. So we are going to explore this in more depth today. And we're probably going to we'll see what emerges in the conversation, and we're probably going to look at a range of topics. But I would love to introduce Nina, for those of you who don't know her. So she's a transformational facilitator, teacher, space holder, coach, just incredibly brilliant and loving human. And yeah, I think one of the things that I think about you, Nina, just like, I think that I think of you as someone who kind of like across all realms of your life, like whether you're, whether you're just like, connecting as a friend, or whether you're holding space, or whether you're leading your program, that there's a consistency in how you show up. And there's a real sense of open-heartedness and lovingness. And then also like really getting to the depths and the core of seeing humans in such a, at a level that I think most humans, aren't able to see themselves, which is such a profound gift. And Nina teaches, she offers these 4-month containers that are called Experience Freedom. And she's going to be offering one soon, so she will get into that at the end. But these are incredibly transformative, containers for everyone involved. And it really is about being yourself and showing yourself fully, and how much healing just happens in that space. And, you know, I think even as I was thinking about the show, and I hope we'll get into this a little bit because so much of my work is centered around, you know, working with trauma. I was thinking about how trauma unwinds in that safe space. Like so much of, you know, there are so many techniques that we can use. And I know that you also know some of those techniques. And there's something about being in the presence of, you know, a space holder or a group that's allowing you to be fully yourself that can allow that unwinding. So I hope we'll get into that a little bit today. Let's see if there's anything that I would add. I think that's good.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction. And I'm so excited to be back with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so I think we can just dive in. Let's see. We're probably gonna. Ooh, yeah. Sorry, I just pulled it up on my phone and it started speaking to me. And I think Nina is gonna, if you know, if, for people who are watching as we get into this conversation, if you know people have questions or comments, I think Nina is going to be tracking that so that we can. We don't always do this in these interviews, but it would be great to you know, really, yeah, basically have people contribute and be able to deepen the conversation. So, yeah, why don't you start by just, I don't know if you remember the live that you did, but if you want to just give a little bit, you know, share a little bit about this topic and what you were seeing at the time and what you were speaking into.
Yeah, I love this topic because it's such a beautiful thing when we start to gather and gain tools that work. The first thing we want to do is share them. I know for me, once I started to create a system and a rhythm for my life that was actually really simple but incredibly helpful, you know, the first light that went on was, oh my gosh, people need to know about this. Like, I need to share the goods. And so, what I saw at the beginning of this quarantine and pandemic was, you know, a lot of us realized, a lot of teachers and coaches and space holders saw a lot of people who had not learned to be with themselves. You know, most of the world is moving really quickly. They're distracting, numbing, you know, watching TV, drinking, doing drugs, dating obsessively, working out obsessively. You know, a lot of the world, especially Western culture, moves quickly and it's based around distraction, numbing, consumption. And when this happened and everybody was invited to really be with themselves and go inward and be more still, there was a lot of, you know, disruption happening. And those of us who had already been in the inward game for a minute or two were like, okay, we actually got this. I'm safe here. This is great. And I want to be of service because I think a light bulb went on for a whole lot of beings who know they're here for a reason during that time. A lot of us were like, oh shit, this is it. Like, I've been gearing up for this moment that I didn't know was coming, but this feels like one of those times where I have gifts to share. And as I was feeling into the energy and asking myself what my role in this was, because I feel like I'm somebody who has a lot to offer anyone who's on an inward journey, I realized that there was this like, oh, I have to do something about it happening. And that's not actually what the invite was. It was a, can we just be with ourselves and see what happens? Like, that really was what the energy was asking. You know, nature wanted to pause. We were being asked to come more in tune and clearer about what was actually happening in our inner world. Even if we've been on this path for a long time, we were still being invited into that. And there was a piece of me that was almost getting annoyed at like all these coaches being like, I got a 6-week program, learn how to be with yourself. And all of that is really beautiful. And I don't want to take away from the value of this work because obviously I teach it too, and it's important. But what I noticed was that it was actually really a time for all of us to be with ourselves and to become more deeply in touch with who we really are, and then allow any creation to come from that place. not from the there's a problem, let me fix it with my tools. It was let's actually see what's there and see what naturally wants to be birthed from me in my stillness and in my openness. To me, those are authentic gifts. That's what the world actually needs from you, is the thing that just comes out when you're being who you are, not the thing you think you have that will fix the problem that you've perceived. So
Mm,
that was kind
mm,
of like the basics for the live that I
yeah,
shared a few months ago. And it's
yeah,
still kind of applicable.
yeah. Yeah, I love what you just shared. And I think, I mean, this might be obvious, but I'm going to ask this question anyway, just to deepen into it, which is, with everything that you shared, why do you think that it's important to come from that space of stillness and like deep attunement to self and openness, which is what we're kind of calling like a more authentic space, versus a space of, you know, wow, I really want to contribute. It's in my heart. Um, but maybe the contribution is coming more from ego or more from our minds. Mhm.
Yeah. Some of, a heart centered contribution is always going to be the most powerful one. And I'm also not saying that like a mind based or ego based desire to be of service is necessarily bad. It's not. It's just not quite as transformative as like that true, authentic expression that those of us who are service minded are already built for. So a lot of people who are here to be of service don't actually have to like fix the problem or figure out what to do. It's in our openness and our intention to be of service that the thing we're meant to offer will actually be birthed through us. It's a natural process because that's why we're here.
Mhm.
And so when we come at reality from a perspective of something's broken, I need to fix it, or there's a problem, let me solve it, often the solution that we're creating is created from the level of the problem. And if I'm just here looking at the thing that I think is a problem, it's likely that the thing I'm using to fix it is carrying some resistance to what is, because now I'm in resistance of the moment and of the thing I'm perceiving. And I've also created a story that my mind can know better than divinity, than life itself. And I know how to make it better. And so for me, what I encourage people to do when they are perceiving a problem or when something looks or feels like a problem, really the move is to raise your own vibration and to move yourself into a frequency that's not at the level of the problem anymore, where your vision is wider and you're more open and you're able to see that there isn't actually a problem in the first place, and that whatever solution you may need is now totally available, and it's an authentic one because we're not just trying to combat the moment. We're able to view wider, longer, deeper, more true and in tune with what it is, actual solutions, as opposed to like band-aids that we see. Like, you know, we're at a time where like we can't just be plugging up the holes. Like we have
Yeah.
to actually like
Mhm.
restructure the way that we do things and be with ourselves and each other. Like this isn't a band-aid type of moment in history. This is a let me take a moment and really view the ways that I've been going about life, the ways that I've been conditioned to go about life, how it's totally structured, and what actually feels truest to me in my heart.
Mhm.
And if you're coming at something like this thinking that you already have all of the answers, you probably don't. Like, this is a collective problem. It's in all of us, and it's not necessarily a problem, but it's a collective experience that we're having. And so I believe that there are so many people on the earth right now who are perfectly built and prepared to deliver real beautiful transformation and shifts, and I consider myself one of them. And I also know that I don't know what that looks like yet necessarily. And I don't think any of us do, because the timelines aren't totally clear. There's still so much polarization in the field. There's so many different timelines that are available, and things are changing rapidly. So we're still kind of in the tumult of it. And if we start trying to fix things from right where we're at, tomorrow those solutions won't even be relevant anymore, because things are evolving so fast that we really need to take a view from an expanded perspective before we go trying to plug up all the leaks.
Yeah, there's so many levels of what you just said, and I want to reflect a couple of them. To what you're saying, I think, and kind of how it lands in me. But also just so like what you just said, right, is that if we're part of the purpose of taking that expanded view is because we're going to be able to make a real difference in the long run that isn't that band-aid approach, but also that's based more on divinity, that's based more on the truth, that's based more on the truth of the moment as it's unfolding, which is always going to be kind of, I mean, we can come up with plans and solutions and whatnot from that space. Obviously, it doesn't just have to be like, what's happening right in this moment? But it's always, it's like, I like the word expanded view, that like, I like that you use that, because it's like, okay, how do we see this from a larger perspective? And so, yeah, we don't need to make the ego and the mind wrong, but the reason I use those words too is like, and you used it in the live that you did, is because it's like to almost to prove a kind of point, like, where am I coming from? Like, where's my level of operation? One of the things that I was thinking when you were speaking to, because, I have mixed feelings in all honesty about sort of like some of what you were speaking to about the law of attraction, in part because to me, it can be very shaming, or like, oh, I have to get it right. I have to, if I'm in this like larger view, I can only be in the larger view, which I don't think is what you're saying, but that definitely can come through for me. And for like a lot of people that I work with. Because so what I was thinking is like, really it's about like everything that you said to me, or that you just said, what it brought up in me was like, the reason to take this expanded view, the reason to come from the being, our beingness, or from what's alive in the moment, is because it feels good. Like, the more we're being ourselves, the more it actually feels good. And then the contribution itself feels good. And I was actually thinking when you were speaking, I'll just share this, which I was remembering when I listened to your live. So the first 3 weeks, at least, when I think you had actually probably just left Bali, but the first 3 weeks after they had kind of said, closed everything here, I had all the symptoms of COVID. And I was quite sick. And I had no energy to do, I have lots of energy to contribute, and I had no energy to contribute. And I actually was having to work with I had a lot of breathing stuff going on. And it was this profound period of like actually being in stillness with this fear of death for myself. And I had no idea what was on the other side. And I was still seeing clients and whatnot, but like, so it's just a good example of like, it took me actually several months to get to the point of having an authentic contribution, like on the outside, right? Because I've done enough inner work to be like, well, this is actually what's presenting itself. This is what's here for me to be with right now. So that's why I really loved your live too, because it was just like, yeah, there's no place for me to go but here. And actually me unwinding this and the contribution that that's going is, and then will continue to unfold, and the trust in that, which is exactly what has happened. And the other beings, whether it was like through a class that I taught, or my clients, or just friends that I was able to, through my direct experience, contribute to, came naturally. And it felt good and it felt right. So anyway, that's also kind of what came to mind in what you shared.
Yeah, I love that example, because that's exactly what I'm talking about, is that our contribution is our willingness to be who we are, where we are, with what we have in front of us, with what we're feeling, with what we're experiencing, with what's true for us in that moment. And so if you're at a place where you're like, this thing is being birthed through me right now. I want to give it. Amazing. That's so
Mhm.
great. And
Mhm.
if that's not actually what's true for you, what I want
Mhm.
to do is melt the shame around that and remind those of us who are teachers and highly sensitive beings that if something that is a clear offering isn't coming out of you right now, it doesn't mean that you're not doing your job. You're actually still contributing by being willing to be with what is in its entirety. And I would say that that's actually the most contributive thing you can do. And that's a lot of what that live was about is, I joke to a lot of my clients that 90% of my job is to take really good care of myself and to be with what is for me
Mhm.
first. And then the result of that is my overflow. And that's my service. It's my play, it's the love that I get to share. And I appreciate the reflection you offered in the beginning of this that I like to show up that way for everyone in my life. Like, I want to be that way for my friends, for my family, for my romantic connections, for my clients. Like, I want to pour the full force of my love into the world everywhere I can. And I'm not actually able to do that from an authentic place of like a true vibration of love if I don't be with my own shit first, my own pain, my own fear, my own shame, my own play and joy. Like, all of it means that I need to be on my own authentic path and be willing to be with what is completely, and also trust that that is my major contribution. It's in my vibration. If
Yeah.
we're one, which we are, we're one being, we just look separate. Then really my healing work is first to raise my own vibration and to learn to maintain it. And I don't mean raise your vibration by avoiding the things you think are lower, like the emotions we're afraid of or avoiding. Grief, sadness, all of it can feel amazing if you open to it. And so for me, raising your vibration means opening far enough to allow all of it to move through you, even the scary stuff, even the stuff you're told not to feel, especially as a woman. Like, you cry too much, you're too sensitive. Like, I've been hearing this shit since I was born. But in my raising of my own vibration, in my practice, in my acceptance of myself, in my authenticity, I can spend a day just crying on the floor. And that's my version of service that day. That's me being beautiful because it's me being in my authentic truth. And my mind might have a different story of what I'm supposed to be doing that day. But if I was supposed to be doing something else, then something else would be happening. But this is what's happening. So if this
Yeah.
is the thing happening that's authentic for me right now, then this is actually the most contributive thing I can do, is be with the energy that I'm being asked to be with. That's
Mhm.
it. It's not as confusing as people think it is. And where we get tripped up, especially those of us who are used to being of service, is that our ego wants the dopamine hit of, I did a thing today. I helped that person. I sold this program. I made this money. I got this many likes. Someone
Mhm.
said I changed their life. All of that is so beautiful. But if we feel empty without it, then we're using our service to source value externally, which is the same fucking thing as like posting a photo for validation or trying to get partnership for validation or whatever. And so,
Mhm.
it's the
Well,
ego that thinks we should be doing anything other than what's authentic for us today.
yeah, I love all of that. And it ultimately doesn't feel good. So it brings me back to that, because being with ourselves in our authenticity and what we're truly feeling, and then honoring that as the greatest contribution. And there's many, there's different levels of this that I'll speak to in a moment, but like ultimately, at least in my world and in the people around me, like that's what actually feels good. And the more that we're being ourselves and we're fully opening to it, it's like you said, all these emotions can happen and we get more and more comfortable with them. And then what I always think about it is like we're in the joyful natural expression of who we are, no matter what we're experiencing. And there is a flow. I feel it. I mean, it feels bodily to me. It's like, oh, I'm being me. And and it can be something as like, wow, I'm owning that, like, I think this really, like, sort of shameful thing that I wish I didn't think, right? But I'm actually allowing that to come through, and I'm being me. and I'm not trying to bypass it. I'm not trying to like be somewhere else. And so that's also where I see this kind of conversation, which is that we're kind of trained to like bypass these things in order to be of service. And I think the level at which you're talking about, which really kind of inspires me and enlivens something in me, is that um, the world that we live in has been really based in that. Actually, it's like, it's the doing, it's the, oh, I'm, like you just said, like, you know, if I have the partner, then I'll feel good. If I have this, then I'll feel good. It's the seeking out. And it's really why we're where we are in our world right now, right? Because there's a lot of doing versus being, and being in our like, so I mean, what I was sensing into when you were talking is that um how do I say it? Because this was really this was part of what was really exciting me about contribution and service, is that um, we are creating the new world that we want to be a part of by what you're suggesting that we do, right? Because everything right now, I mean, things have been based off of like this kind of like searching and seeking, and I'm never enough, and you know, kind of, I'm trying to think of like some other words, but um, you know, we're more concerned with kind of like how we look or how we're being perceived, or um, instead of actually trying to think of the words, but yeah, instead of like how kind of what you were sharing actually about yourself, which I really, which I reflected at the beginning and I do see in you, is that you're showing up, you are the love. Like you are, like you said, like you are that vibration that then is just inherently healing for others because you're being you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and everyone has access to that. And like that's the fun part. You know, I may have my special unique signatures of gifts and you
Yeah.
have yours, and we all do, and those are the beautiful things that come forth through us when we're in that authentic state that you're describing. And I agree completely. This is us creating the world that we want to be in. You know, if I was the engineer who's going to solve the blank, then that's what would come through me when
Yeah.
I'm, you know, in my openness and in my authentic expression. And so, you know, a lot of what you were describing, like how we're taught to go about getting the thing we think we're supposed to be or need, you know, sometimes people want to be of service because they think that that's how they're going to prove that they're good enough or prove that they're good at all. If I can help someone else, then I'll know that I'm good. And that really stems from shame of being separate. And we all carry some level of that somewhere just by being human. A lot of us, you know, at some depth, we're trying
Yeah.
to prove that we're good and that we're not separate from God, that we are God, that we're love, that we're one. We want to taste that and we want to prove that it's right, even though our mind and our ego is constantly trying to prove the opposite. And that's part of the dance of being a human while also having spirit expressed through the body. And
Mm-hmm.
if we're not willing to be with ourselves and our own shame and our own stories and our own fears and our own brilliance, then how will we truly have compassion and be willing to be with others in their shame or fear or grief? And it comes from that idea that, you know, if I don't have this glass of water, I can't give you this glass of coconut water, which means I have to cultivate the ability to be with myself in all parts of myself and hold myself in compassion there and be willing to see myself as innocent before I can authentically offer that to anyone else. It's an embodiment of what we are saying we know. It's a practice that we actually get to own. We have the code now in our body, and that's the place from which we get to just radiate it. Like you said, if I get to really be love, which means I have to be that for me first, then I get to be it for others. And often we try to go backwards, right? We go, if I do this thing, then I'll feel good. If I get the thing, then I'll feel good. And I love how you simplified it. No, no, no. If I'm willing to be with me, if I can feel good as a me and do
Mhm.
that first, then I'll feel good. And maybe I won't need all this other shit I think I need. Or if I do still want it, if it's still the truth of my heart, it will come a lot easier because I'm feeling good and now I'm a match to more things that will make me feel good.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and what I think about it, even in the last piece of what you said, is that there's something that feels it just for me at least, and I think for most of us, like there's something that just feels good about um I don't like for me it's like the creation comes so much easier when it's in alignment with the truth. So for example, if I had like while I was experiencing what I was experiencing, if I was like, I need to be a contribution and I was pushing against the stream, it would have actually felt like violence to my body, right? And I probably would have like had an even harder time and gotten sicker and but honoring the truth of like, okay, there's something potent happening here and I'm being with this and I don't know the way through. um then it's like it just I mean I keep going back to like whatever we're feeling then starts to feel better regardless of what it is, regardless of what the emotion is or how scary it is or whatnot. And there's just there's just so much more ease and flow and grace to what to the doing. I mean, I want to call it a doing, but it's really like to the unfolding, we could say, right? um yeah. So but I think I'm sensing like I'm guessing for some people this is like a really really new concept. Just to be like, okay, wow, the biggest contribution that I could make is landing in my own experience, being with myself, honoring the truth, um, and that actually I can radiate that out. And then anything that's created there is going to come from that embodied, authentic space.
Yeah. There's so much contributive power in welcoming all parts of ourselves home. We've
Mm-hmm.
all been raised in different environments and we've all experienced trauma. If you're a human who was born, you have experienced some kind of trauma.
Yeah.
And more that we welcome ourselves home and find that place of surrender and trust in the moment and connection to the isness that we all are, the more that that vibration strengthens in the whole field. And so
Yeah.
if again it's like the band-aid thing, if we go around trying to fix humans like they're broken, which they're not, then it's like we're adding more energy to the idea that there's even a problem in the first place. Whereas if we are willing to be with ourselves and, just like you said, trust what's here in front of us, do the next most loving thing for ourselves, and if there's inspired action from that place, great. That's what actually strengthens and raises the vibration of the entire field. And that's where true creativity comes from anyway, because creativity is not a thing you go do. Creative flow, true creativity is just an energy that you've allowed to move through you. And that happens from a place of openness, which means the wider we're able to get, the more whatever we're here to give will just be birthed through us. I know a lot of people really panic that they don't know what they're supposed to do. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's not how it works. It's, can you be with yourself fully and see what's there? Be curious about where you feel led, what feels expansive and exciting to you, what feels scary. Can you be with what's there and allow whatever is meant to move through you to move through? And that's what feels so good. That's like orgasmic bliss when you are
Yeah.
birthing creation from that place into the world. That's when something moves through you. And writers, poets, like a lot of artists have this experience where they look at a thing that they've created and it's almost like they weren't even there during the process with their mind, or like it feels like a gift that was bestowed upon them that they got to shepherd into reality. Like those are the creative gifts that I think we really want, because we know that that's what's possible for every human. We all have unique brilliance. We all have gifts that we're here to give. And it comes from that alignment to truth and the moment and that openness where we get to really birth the thing we're here to give. And like that's the feeling where we're like, oh my gosh, did I do that? I don't know. I don't remember doing it, but I know that I did do it. Wow, that's so amazing. What a gift. Like that's the feeling I think that we all really deserve and want.
Yeah, it's you know what yeah, what that brings up for me, I think that is very true. And that, I mean, it like I feel so enlivened, and that's that it's like I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I want to, that's what I want to experience. um what strikes me is that you're actually one of the things, so you're, I mean, one of the things that you're suggesting, just to go back to it, right, is like, okay, learning how to be with what is and open to what you're actually experiencing, being in the truth. And so I do want to get into like how you might guide people to do that. That's one angle of the conversation that I think would be great. We can have that conversation. And I also just want to speak to something that's coming through, which is that, you mentioned trauma. And what I think about is that I just like kind of had this light go on, that the capacity to open, like what you're talking about, is being back into an innocent, almost childlike state. Like if you imagine a child who was in a good enough environment, like an infant, right? And they were in a securely attached environment, they would feel safe enough in their own being, in their own body, to live in this way. And then that is where, like, you're taking it to the step of like oneness and, this connection to God, we could say. But it just strikes me that it's like the process of being able to open, right, is actually having to go through these traumas and to re-experience the places where we don't have that level of openness. So that if there's like, wow, I couldn't trust life to take care of me because it really wasn't safe when I was, a child. And so, wow, now we're in the pandemic and there's a big I don't know, right? And so I never as a child, let's say, like, I never as a child felt like it was like being in the mystery or being in the like, what's going to happen next? That actually wasn't safe, right? I always had to be, let's say, hypervigilant or on guard. This actually is somewhat of my story, but I was just more giving an example. Then it's like, okay, well, this is what's, I don't want to say it's, I don't like the word that it's what's in the way of oneness, because it's part of the journey, right? But that we actually do need to, like, this is where trauma meets this kind of more, we could say, spiritual view, right? And I know that in the work that you do, I mean, what I love about your work is that you are holding a like larger view of, this kind of like love and oneness and truth, with like the nitty gritty of, yeah, wow, this is us and our human, messy, shameful, like, child trauma selves that we have to, that we're here to open to. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It's funny that you are speaking to this because I actually was thinking about this exact thing this morning. And I'm with you. For me, for most of my life, the world has not felt like a very safe place. And I still feel like that on a lot of days, even now. I've done a tremendous amount of my own trauma work, and I'm still seeing how I respond to not feeling safe. Like, especially right now when things are really chaotic, I have this similar pattern of wanting to escape and go somewhere else, and my ability to connect to like the psychic and more non-dual spiritual realms was actually part of my survival tactic as a child, because it got me out of the earth and to
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else where I felt safer. And so uh, I agree with you that our trauma is most often the thing that makes it challenging for us to connect to the truth that we're safe here, that we're one, that you're not alone on the planet with, danger around every corner. I would say that most of us in some
Yeah.
way did
Mm-hmm.
not have a very supportive upbringing, at least in most
Mm-hmm.
of the work I've done and all the friends I have. You know, I might have one or two who had a great childhood, but even some trauma snuck in there for them. And so I'm with you. I've had to do so much trauma work to release shame was a huge one for me. And I've gone through so many different trauma modalities and tested ones that work for me. And that's been a huge piece of what has allowed me to feel safe enough to open. It is a prerequisite to
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. And it is important that we address that so that people listening to this are like, I can't open fully to what is. It feels like certain death if I do that. And I know what that's like. And I know you do too. Like, I know what it's like to be with myself in an emotional place where I thought I would die for sure because it just hurt that bad to even acknowledge the pain that I was carrying because I had hid it for so long or repressed it or covered it up with drugs and alcohol or sex or whatever it is. And so doing our trauma work is like step one of this. And if you are someone who has not been on a path of doing your trauma work yet because maybe you didn't even know that was a thing or you didn't have the resources or the information, you know, it's still pretty new. Like
Mhm.
it's important that people hear that that's kind of step one. And that really is part of what the invitation of this whole thing has been is unearthing a tremendous amount of personal and collective trauma so that we can be free of it. So, yeah, if you're going to accept the invite to be with yourself over the past few months,
Yep.
chances are you have remembered or rediscovered major trauma that you're carrying, or maybe just the effects of the trauma that you're carrying. And so I would say a few things are really important in order to get to that place of like openness, safety, etc. There are many ways you can go about trauma work. I would say a safe space folder is like absolutely number one. The method is totally secondary. It's find someone who has the skills and the knowledge who you trust, who you feel really good with, and allow, you know, a co-created trauma healing experience to be done. For me, group container was the most powerful, transformative trauma healing experience I've ever had. And that's why I created mine in light of what I had seen work. But in combination with that, you know, do your trauma work, but also having a daily practice where you meditate every single day, no matter what, that is going to cultivate and increase the part of you that can feel our oneness, that can trust it, that has access to it. If you sit in meditation for 10, 20, 30 minutes every single day, the part of you that trusts our oneness and can sense it and feel it in your body and have access to an experience of it will grow every single day. And that will allow you to trust life itself because you won't be just trying to escape death. You'll be curious and interested in playing here, and it will create huge shifts across your whole life. So, like, do the trauma work. Daily meditation practice is like the most transformative thing I think everyone has access to. It's free. Like, please do it. And then the other thing is the radical choice is
Mhm.
that like, I still have trauma responses all the time. And I teach trauma work every day. And I still watch my own flare up. And I'm like, oh, I'm aware of what my trauma responses are. I know what they feel like in my body. And I have a list, like a literal written list of things I can do that help my nervous system in those moments. And sometimes I forget where the list is. It's like right there in my phone, but it doesn't matter because if you're in a trauma response, everything you see is danger and like you just can't. And so what I also do is I share that list of things that are soothing to my nervous system with people that I love. So if I call my best friend in a panic, she goes, Nina, go take your shoes off and go stick your feet in the earth. Go walk to the beach. Take 4 deep breaths right now. People who love and know us can help us self-soothe and care for ourselves if we are willing to, you know, share what works and to commit to choosing to open even when we feel too scared to. There is a part of us that is able to witness the trauma response once we've done enough trauma work and we've gotten to the point where we can kind of hold both perspectives, which is a result of the meditation practice as well. You know, if I'm in a trauma response, there's part of me that goes, oh my gosh, the world's not safe. I'm not safe. I'm going to die. And there's another part of me that's watching myself have a response to the world. And I go, oh, look, my little human is scared. She's so scared right now. It's okay. I've got us. You're not going to die. And even if you are, it's still probably not as big of a deal as you think it is. We're going to be okay. Let's do the next most loving thing for us. And so, because I've chosen to commit myself to being someone who will open as much as I can, moment by moment, even when I'm afraid, even when I'm scared, I'll lean in and toward to the best of my ability, which one day might be great and one day might be next to nothing. That allows us to start to dissolve the momentum that those trauma responses have. And we start to really see the way that we're navigating the world and responding to it. And we get some distance between stimuli and response. And there's a sense of peace and freedom that comes with that. That's like, can't put a price on it.
Wow, I couldn't have said that any better myself. We're very on the same page about about how to work with trauma. I just like love hearing how you describe that. Yeah, and I would add, you know, with some of the sort of what I call kind of like nervous system rewiring or trauma hacks. I mean, that's what I consider them as, because you know, I always talk about it as like it's moment to moment. You're literally showing up for yourself moment to moment. It's not like I'm in a trauma response and I'm trying to be over there. It's like, what's the next best thing to do? What's the way to show up? But one thing I would say is that sometimes showing up, sometimes what openness looks like, and I know, I'm sure you're going to agree with this, Nina, but I just want to make the point, is actually, you know, what some people would think of as distraction, which is not really distraction, but it's like, oh, actually right now I'm so triggered that it would be better for me to, you know, completely take my mind off of this and put my attention elsewhere to something that feels pleasurable or grounding or resourcing, you know? And so that also just extending our definition of openness to that like, you know, it's about actually working with your own specific nervous system and your own trauma responses, which, you know, I really want to stress what Nina said about having a space holder, whether it's in a group or individually, because that's how we learn this stuff. And it's also how the scaffolding starts to get, what I consider to be scaffolding, you know, starts to develop. It's like somebody else, first of all, these traumas happened in relationship, right? And so then we're in relationship with others to heal them. But also it's like, it's how we start to find the shifts and the movements. And we're getting help with that. And then we can do it for ourselves, obviously, more and more. And then when you're at like the place that Nina and I are at, because I completely have the same experience, that I still have all kinds of trauma responses come up. And my story is also interesting because, I mean, I've written this and talked about it in many different places, but for years I had all kinds of tools and I just wasn't taking 100% responsibility for it. There was some part of me that was still kind of, you know, oh, I don't like, why do I have to experience this over and over again? And the huge shift for me was making that decision and saying at a certain point, like, I'm the only one responsible for this. And people can help me, but ultimately I have to make that choice. And it is a game changer. Like, I remember a couple months ago, I had an experience of like waking up in panic, which has happened many times. And it took me literally 2 or 3 hours of breathing into my pelvis and getting the energy down to calm down. And it was a long time. And I've been doing this work for a really, really long time, right? But the fact that I did it for myself and I committed to that, when it was like what we're talking, it was an example of what we're talking about. It was like I was with me. And so there was actually way more space, way more love. And when it shifted, I also just felt like this huge surge of like, I did this, you know, and it was so empowering. So yeah, so I just can't, I mean, I love hearing kind of how you've worked with it. And I also think that, I do think it's the first foundation for anyone in a process of opening. And I also think that it's ongoing, like we're talking about, right? And I think what you're referring to, maybe you can say more, but about, you know, I've seen this in the groups that I do as well, but in doing it in a group context and why it's been really healing is because we're such, like, we have mirror neurons and we're kind of in this morphogenetic field together. And so when we witness others, we often have our own spontaneous healing, you know, and there's such a healing of the shame that is often overlying the trauma, so that then there's kind of there can be more openness and in that, and more healing. Is that what you were referring to?
Yeah, I mean, the amount of shame that I was completely unaware of for most of my life was really the thing that prevented me from healing the trauma that I was carrying, because it was so covered up by a story of, this makes me unlovable. This makes me not good enough for love. Because this happened to me, I'm tainted, I'm not good, I'm gross, I'm unworthy, just all the different expressions of shame. We don't realize until we are in this work teaching it or receiving it that unworthiness or not good enough for love, for life, etc., that's just shame. And
Yeah.
shame is, I'm separate from that which I am. And what happens in the group container, as you mentioned, is not only are we witnessed in the thing that we are so certain makes us unlovable, but then we're loved after by a
Mm.
group of people who aren't our family, our friends, our partners, they're just peers who also showed up to be loved. And if a group of people who were strangers 3 or 4 months ago can love me and the thing that I think absolutely makes me unlovable, then maybe I was wrong the whole time about my story and I am actually worthy of love. And from what I've seen in myself and also in groups that I've led, is that once that is gone, the shame is lifted, the trauma will go. We can move it out of the body really fast if we're not cementing it in by hiding it and keeping it there. And so,
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah, that piece, like that
Yeah.
shame dis- dissolving, was really like the biggest amount of freedom I had ever experienced in my life. It was the shame that prevented me from even acknowledging there was a trauma that needed to be healed. And having that group container, that huge place of love just for the sake of love. These people aren't trying to get anything from you. They're just there and they love you and it's real and you could feel it. Like that is so powerful. And exactly what you said so beautifully, that when we witness someone else in that, when we're seeing someone share the thing that makes them so afraid to be seen, and we're loving them so much, like, oh my gosh, yes, like let me love you in your darkest place. Like we want to see people in that, we want to witness each other and to love people into healing. We receive a level of healing in that too. We receive permission to do it also. And if there's any tiny thread of experience that connects us, which there always is, when we're in a group container, we're all mirrors for each other. We realize, oh my gosh, I'm not alone in mine either. Holy shit. And like
Yeah.
the miracles just ensue. And it's so much easier than people think it is. And
Mm-hmm.
it's fast and it's fucking miraculous and it's beautiful and it's amazing.
Yeah. 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 It's reminding me, I was in a leadership training, and when we would, he had us, when we, in the last year I was in it, like he had us, like, when we would do something in front of the room that we were being witnessed, he would then be like, okay, make sure that you then get touch and you get after, like you go to somebody in the audience, in the group. And it was such a game changer, because there's also the shame of being seen, right? And it's like we're in a group and we're sharing something, and there's the level of shame of like, wow, I'm sharing this super vulnerable thing, and do people accept me and love me? And of course we can get reflection for that, but also then like that healing of like getting it on such a visceral level, like you are so loved, and actually I've got you. So
Mm.
yeah, that's what it made me kind of think of. um, we could talk forever. I want to wrap this up in an hour. I mean, to make it an hour. So I'm just trying to think kind of where to go from here. Well, one thing I just want to really appreciate about you, Nina, and your work, and then maybe we can get into the work, is that, you know, I'm so appreciative of, like, as we've been having this conversation, I'm really appreciative of the way that you're holding and really a stand for what I guess what I would say is being like the truth of reality and oneness and sort of, you know, this kind of larger love. That I like, that I think that we all, this sense of wholeness, right? This sense of like real fulfillment and true completeness in our beings, which I think we all really want at the core. I really am there with you. And for me, one of the things I've been really exploring, and also with the women that I work with, is sort of like some of the spiritual dogmas that get thrown around that um, you know, can feel like, oh, I need to be, and I need to, like, it's like, how do I say this? Like, I want those things, right? But then they become another way that I shame myself, or they become like a concept that's outside of myself that somehow I can't reach because, oh, I'm feeling really terrible today. And this is actually the truth, not that I'm in this high vibration, right? Or not that I feel fully fulfilled. And so I'm really appreciating this conversation because it's bringing, I mean, you don't live in that, you aren't an embodiment of like those kinds of dogmas. I do feel like, personally, I do feel like they're kind of thrown around in this industry quite a bit. And it's like a huge space for shame. And so what I'm appreciating about this conversation is that, you know, is like being able to be like, yes, like we can touch into wanting this. Like, what is the truth of what we actually desire, right? Which I think is what you do in your programs so beautifully and in who you are. And it's not from a place of like, you're supposed to be something or you're supposed to get somewhere. It's from like, what is the truth? And then let me be with the messy truth of each moment of being human. You know, let me be, how do I be with my trauma? How do I show up in a way that's like, this feels good in this moment, or I'm actually being kind to the person on, you know, I'm smiling and like genuinely feeling kind to this person on the street, you know? Like, how do I actually live in the truth of who I am? So something about this conversation is bringing together for me kind of the two worlds in a really beautiful way. And I think you do that so lovely. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I do find a lot of what we see to be a little lopsided. That, you
Yeah.
know, the feminine is beauty and radiance, and, you know, I'm like, and chaos and rage and fury and all of it. And so, you know, part of what I feel called to do here is to honor the entirety of the human experience as it is. And for me, that is honoring divinity, because if I was supposed to be different, I would be. You know, I'm moving toward what feels truest to me to the best of my ability, moment by moment. And for me, you know, my program is called Experience Freedom. And what I've learned through my experience is that it's freedom as, not freedom from. It's, can I feel a sense of freedom in any emotional experience or trigger or this moment now, not freedom from the emotions I don't want to experience. That's an escape. That's not freedom. Freedom means, can I be with all of it no matter what's happening outside of me? It's a willingness and a choice and a presence. And that includes being with the shit that hurts, because that's part of being a human too. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Beautiful. Well, so why, do you want to speak to, we might go over an hour, but do you want to speak to your programs and your next program that's coming up, and also kind of how people can find you and follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you can find me on Instagram at it's Nina Camille. And if you're watching this, you already know how to find me on Facebook because I'm tagged in it. And
This video will also go on Instagram, and Nina will be tagged. So
great. My container is a 14-week online experience with a group of men and women. And most of these people have already been on some path of spirituality and personal development and therapy. They've had a coach or two, they've done some trauma work, or maybe they haven't yet. But essentially, what I do is I take people from like knowing all of this stuff to living as it. And that's really what I find to be the superpower, is that if we develop a practice of alignment, and that includes being curious about what our specific needs are. Like you said, our nervous systems are all built different. We have different traumas, we have different survival patterns, we have, different responses. If we get to know ourselves really lovingly and we start to create rhythms and systems and practices to bring ourselves into alignment, then we create a feeling of safety. And then we open and we see what's there. Sometimes we open and we find a whole bunch of unhealed trauma. And sometimes we open and we find a whole bunch of brilliant, unique, amazing gifts. Usually it's both. And, being in the group, you get a lot of opportunity to be witnessed and seen, and to share your wisdom as well, and to also learn from each other. So it's very co-creative. Everybody in it has a heart of service, and they want to live as an embodiment of love and truth and oneness, and they want to know how to do it. And so we figure that out together, and includes a retreat as well. And it really is committing to a lifestyle of freedom and purpose and alignment in a way that feels most authentic for you and your expression and how you want to show up in the world with your gifts and your light, and whatever wants to move through you or not, depending on where you're at. So it's
Yep.
a really honoring, service minded, heart open, like really authentic, co-creative space for amazing people to do this work.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And so your next program starts
September 8th. So
okay.
I'm enrolling now. I have about 5 spaces left in the next upcoming group. And it's every Tuesday night. It includes a week-long luxury retreat, and I have the dates pinned right now for October 6th to 13th in Bali, but I'm not quite sure that will happen. So the retreat is tentative, and we'll move it and postpone it if we need to, but the program will run regardless. And that's what I did this summer, and it worked just fine. So it's all online, and people can do it from anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Amazing. And I've known Nina for a while and feel like I really get the depth of her work and know her well. And I can't highly enough recommend her programs. I know that they are life-changing for people, and magic and miracles happen. Well, I mean, what I loved what you described, which is amazing, is that and you've done it many times, and you're using like tried and true practices. Like it's like you're bringing in also a lot of structure. So it's really it's like, to me, it's the beauty of all worlds kind of coming together. And so anybody who feels inspired by what Nina has shared today, I would really recommend reaching out to her and getting in this round. Yeah. And and so thank you so much for being on the show. We could have like many conversations over and over and over again on different topics. And once again, my name is Lori Beth, and I do this show weekly, and I have like a range of people who come on, and I'm now putting them on Instagram. So they're kind of on both Facebook and Instagram every week. And I have a 3, 6, or 9 month mentorship program for women, and I call my work psychospiritual mentorship, and it's really doing it's basically providing women with the somatic, spiritual, and therapeutic tools to resolve these kind of lifelong traumas and be more of who they are, like similar to Nina, live in the joyful expression of who they are. And my programs are very customized to each person. I can basically work with you on like all different levels of your being and get to the root of like the thing that actually potentially is, actually what's not working, that might be, sort of like we get there and then it's like everything starts to unwind while doing a lot of the nervous system rewiring and trauma work. And I too, you know, my focus is really on women who've been in the self-development space, who've done therapy, done some level of trauma work. Again, it doesn't have to be like super a lot of it, but isn't new to this space. Like they're wanting to take it to the next level and they're really, really ready to transform. And I'm also going to be offering a 4-week series on rewiring money. And actually, this is going to be rewiring your relationship to money through the nervous system and through the body. And it actually I was teaching classes and the women in the group wanted me to teach it. So it's actually a response to, to a need. And so I'm really excited for it. It's going to be limited to 8 women because in my group courses and my teachings, we do, I think similar to Nina, but I do a lot of like working directly with people and then, you know, other people kind of also holding space in the group. So I'll be posting about that soon. Be in touch if any of those interest you. And thank you again, Nina. So lovely to be with you. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much
Thank
for having
you,
me.
everyone.